Welcome back to The Perspective on Barita Satu. I'm with Phelim Kine from Human Rights Watch, talking about their new report, Something to Hide, about media restrictions in Papua despite an apparent opening. Now, we've already spoken about the broad presidential directive that did not come following the announcement that they would allow more access to foreign media. We start talking about the administration, now it gets complicated.
Exactly.
What was the bureaucracy before? What is it now?
So the bureaucracy for decades was something called the Clearinghouse, which was an interagency grouping under the Foreign Ministry of 12 ministries and 18 agencies that were tasked with vetting foreign media applications to visit Papua. So this is something that happened for at least 25 years.
Was it a dedicated office?
A dedicated office, dedicated weekly meetings. So any journalist who wanted to go to Papua had to go through them. And what you had is you had the security agencies, you had the national police, you had this really large group, and essentially one person could veto any journalist application to go to Papua. So it is a grouping that essentially has had this chokehold on foreign media access to Papua. Now, what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has told us, they told us in August, that since Pak Jokowi's announcement of this opening to Papua in May, that agency, that clearinghouse has been liquidated. So what the Foreign Ministry says is we are no longer vetting foreign media applications to go to Papua. Foreign media can just go to Papua. But what they say also is but foreign media have to get a travel document, a surat jalan, from the national police. So this is still a bureaucratic hoop that exists in terms of foreign media going to Papua, in that the national police now have to approve their access to that region.
Okay, so now we'll move to security, because there's an existing resistance to allowing foreign influence. There's a line. And we'll go into the insurgency in this report, I believe, routinely considers foreigners, in Papua they routinely consider foreign journalists as operations of OPM, Free Papua Organization, essentially the enemy. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. I mean, there is this long-standing suspicion about foreign media and foreigners' intentions in Papua.
And why are they wrong? And all right.
Well, I mean, essentially, in all our conversations across the board with elements of the Indonesian government and the foreign ministry, is that essentially when the government looks at Papua, they see East Timor. And this comes up both implicitly and explicitly. They see an area where there is this instability factor of a pro-independence insurgency, in which the government is concerned that foreign influence will actually cause that to boil over. And they don't, and there's this concern that the history will repeat itself, and Papua is the next East Timor. This is something that's implicit and explicit. And in our meetings with the foreign ministry—
that they lose it, you mean?
There's this concern that foreign influence in the guise of foreign media, who they often see as just spies, could be actively seeking to support and to fuel the activities of pro-independence forces. I'll give you an example. You know, we met with representatives of the Foreign Ministry the other day, and what they told us was that they are concerned that foreign media go to Papua and explicitly support and advocate for independence of Papua. They said that they have concerns about the quote-unquote balanced reporting of media going to Papua, and what they want is, they say foreign media should go to Papua, but they need to be neutral. You know, there is no standard in terms of how do you judge whether, and how does the foreign ministry judge whether a report is neutral or balanced. Essentially what the government wants is they want good news from Papua. That's how they judge it. So any journalist who goes and reports on less savory aspects of Indonesian governments in Papua is automatically deemed someone who is anti-Indonesia, pro-independence.
All right, so we're saying open media access, let everyone go, let the negative stories come out, which they will, and let things equalize. So the question is, if they did that, would they equalize, or would it just consistently be negative?
You know, what the situation is in Papua, because of this—
Give it news value. News value, yeah. So carry on. But
yeah, I mean, to address that issue, your question is, what happens if we just let the foreign media go there? Now, what we say, and our view is, and you can see this has played out in other countries, is that when you have an area which is essentially closed off, where there is like enforced isolation from media access, that encourages abuses of the population, human rights abuses, and it encourages impunity by security agencies, government officials, and it allows it blocks the ability for local citizens to find redress. So essentially, media coverage of issues are a safety valve in terms of addressing problems that the local population has. That isn't happening in Papua. It hasn't happened for a long time. Now, it's not just foreign media, because in our report, we also note that local journalists, Indonesian journalists, are also subject to surveillance, harassment, intimidation, and violence from government officials, the security agencies.
It suggests more so.
Even more so, that's right. And for reporting on quote-unquote sensitive stories like corruption or environmental degradation. So foreign media freedom in Papua is something that's just not happening. And our position is, if you open it up, then these types of issues of human rights abuses, of that actually feed and fuel local dissatisfaction with the government can be addressed in some way.
And before we go to break, the methodology of this, people are anonymous within that.
We interviewed more than 100 people for this report, and a large number of both foreign media sources and domestic media sources asked that their names not be used because they were concerned about reprisals from the government and the security forces.
Okay, security forces. We've got to go to break there. Stay with us. Phelim Kine will be going through some history next on The Perspective.